Now, aside from motorcycles, which is what this channel has primarily been about, there is another vehicle that I own that hasn't seen YouTube in probably 10 years. And that vehicle is my 1986 Chevy C10. This is the longest I've owned anything. I've owned this truck since 2011. And the main reason I bought this truck in 2011 is because I had a 1998 Dodge Ram pickup that I drove down to Florida when I first moved to Florida. That's all I had was that truck and whatever I could fit in it. And that's how I moved to Florida. The intention for that truck, and I was 19 at the time, and I sold everything to get that truck, basically because I needed something that was reliable and could hold enough stuff to move me to Florida at the age of 19. And that truck did exactly that. Now, that wasn't without any hiccups, of course. Obviously, if you know anything about Dodges, the transmission is not the best. So, of course, the day that I get to Florida, the transmission goes out in it, and then 6 months after that, the fuel pump goes out, and then basically from that point on, I just had electrical issues. It would idle at 3,000 RPMs. It was a disaster, electrical disaster that I couldn't track down, and that's why I purchased this thing, an old pickup with no electronics that I could just drive, and I knew that it would be good to go. And simple to work on, simple to fix, just minimal. Carbureted, I love it. So when I first got this truck, I didn't really know what that would lead to, and we're gonna get into that shortly, but first, let's talk about the truck a little bit. So again, it was 2011 when I got this truck, and again, the initial thought process behind it was that I would buy something that was simple, a nice little simple carbureted pickup that the parts are cheap, easy to find, and it would be reliable. And originally I was gonna get like a 1969 C10. I could only find one on Marketplace. It was a 6-cylinder, but the body was shot, so this was the next best thing. And this was a 1986 that showed up on, at the time it was Craigslist. Marketplace wasn't even a thing. So Craigslist is where I found this truck, and yeah, that's how it started. So when it came time to go look at the truck, my buddy Mike, we lost Mike a couple years ago, and he was a really good friend of mine. That was kind of the first memory made with the truck, was that night going and picking up that truck. I remember he drove me up there. He had his Caddy at the time and CTS, and it was a badass car, but we drove up there, looked at the truck. He's pretty mechanically inclined as well, so we were able to look it over very well and figure out, you know, whether this truck was worth purchasing. At the time, the guy had this thing listed at like $6,500, and so we went and looked at the truck, and I ended up offering him $2,500, and he took it, and there's a reason for that. When we went to look at the truck, it was at nighttime. I usually don't buy vehicles at night because you can't really see everything, but we had flashlights and we were just kind of checking the truck over and this and that, whatever. But the one thing that the guy said is that he thinks it needs a tune-up because something's not running right, or he couldn't get past 50 miles an hour, and it was just kind of, it was running a little weird. So what we did is we got it started, and I had my buddy kind of rev it up a little bit while I'm under the hood. So I'm looking under the hood, and I noticed that the distributor cap is twisting when he's revving it up. That's not good. But with my knowledge of working on stuff like this over the years growing up, Dad always made us fix our own stuff, so, which is good. And so with that knowledge, I knew exactly what the issue was. This thing wasn't timed properly. The distributor was loose, like it was not good. So basically all we did is we're like, okay, yeah, we'll figure it out, whatever. And so we buy the truck, offer him 2,500 bucks, he takes it, and we go about a half mile down the road to the nearest 7-Eleven, and literally set the timing close enough just by hearing it, you know. We didn't have any tools, so we just kind of finger tight the bolt that holds that distributor into place, and it ran perfectly. In fact, it is still running with the same engine, the same setup that we had back then. This truck has and I only know this because I ran all the casting numbers because I wasn't sure exactly what was under the hood, but the block is a 307 which appears to have come out of like a Camaro or something like that, and the heads are a 305. They're off of a 305 engine. And after doing some research over the years, I found out that some of the old school guys would do this because it raised up the compression and allowed for a little bit more horsepower apparently. And then as far as the transmission goes, it's got the 3-speed turbo 350, the tried and true turbo 350, and that thing has lasted, so it's been what, 13 years, and the whole setup is still working. The only thing that's gone out in this thing is the rear end. That thing locked up while I was going down the road, made a huge boom, and then it wouldn't move anywhere. And that brings me to the next part of this story. So moving to Florida, I was still in the first couple of years of being in Florida, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a shop to work on anything. I didn't know any mechanics. I knew nothing. So when the rear end went out in my truck, I didn't really know what to do. So the guy who came and towed it, I rarely ever trust a tow truck driver, but in this instance I didn't have a choice, so that's what I did. I trusted the tow truck driver, and the guy told me, he's like, hey, I got a buddy with a truck shop. If you drop it off there, he can take care of you. So he gave me the number, I called him, and he's like, yeah, just leave the keys in the gas tank or in the door, and you can drop it off at the shop. I'll take a look at it in the morning and I'll get back to you. Never in a million years would I have thought an old truck like this would lead to lifelong relationships and friendships that it has. So I drop it off at this shop, and TTP, Tony's Total Performance. As you can see, his name is, where's it at? Right there, plastered on the windshield, and that name will continue to live on that windshield. I don't know how many decals we put on there over the years because they just go bad, it's vinyl, but regardless, when one goes bad, another one goes on there. I will support that shop through and through. Basically, he took the truck in, he gave me a quote, I'm like, okay, let's do it, and he fixed the rear end. At the time, the truck was completely stock. I had aftermarket wheels, but nothing crazy. It kind of just looked, I don't know, stock height, nothing fancy whatsoever. But as I'm sitting there talking to him, he did the rear end, we did the posi rear end, and that thing's still doing great. We probably need to service that because it's been a while. But after I'm talking to him for a little bit, then I started getting curious about, okay, well, what if I wanted to lower this truck? Because lowering these C10s look amazing. So we got to talking about that, and then yeah, a couple weeks later, he's doing that. I actually showed up one night while he's working on the truck, and I bring some beer just to try to make friends with him, you know, and I kind of want to see the process because it's very interesting to me. So, and the truck was, at the time, my only transportation. But yeah, by the way, I dailied this thing for 7 years. Actually 8 years, like 8 years I dailied this 86 C10, and I've went on 300-mile trips, I've taken it to work, just up the road, all kinds of stuff. The truck has been just about everywhere. We did a 5.7 drop on it, so basically you do the flip kit in the rear, so the axle sits on top of the leaf springs versus underneath like it does from the factory, and then drop spindles in the front. It used to look like chalk. I'll put up a picture right here so you can see what it looked like. The paint was dry, it looked terrible. Admittedly, I let the truck sit for far too long, and then this past December I decided to get it going again and start driving it more, and that's what I've been doing. And then when I started to kind of get everything going, I met another guy, Anthony, and he owns the detail specialist, and that's in Seminole here. Same thing with TTP, Tony's Total Performance. Everybody's here locally, it's awesome. But anyway, so Anthony, him and I talked. He had this new product that he wanted to try out, and my truck was the perfect candidate because the thing was a wreck. So what we did is, or what he did, I just supplied the money, but what he did was he took that old looking paint and made it look shiny again. So the truck looks amazing now. And again, another great guy. I'll always refer people to him as well for their detail needs. And again, another friendship built because of this truck. As you can see, the interior is nothing special whatsoever. The dash pad is off. Years ago, I had a dash pad in here that, well, when I first got the truck, it just had a red dash pad in here. It was cracked, it looked terrible. And I had one of those like kind of corny like carpet things over it. So I took that out and replaced it with another one. We had a guy do a leather wrapped one, and the issue is that he didn't have the truck, so the fitment was terrible. I still have it, but I just kind of, I'm gonna throw it away because it's just no good. The fitment was terrible, so I'm gonna end up ordering a new dash pad for it. The gauges don't really work like they're supposed to, but that's okay because I have the HDX kit from Dakota Digital that's gonna go in here. I gotta get the bezel to install everything, and we'll take care of that. The seat is obviously just has this iconic seat cover. I didn't go with the red one like most people do, it seems like the red and orange color. I just went with the black one because the stock seat under here is just in terrible condition. And every time you'd get out of the truck, half the seat would come with you, just in little pieces, so that was annoying. So we just got a new seat cover. The rest of the interior is in pretty rough shape, but we're gonna be painting everything black. Like all these door panels, we're gonna redo these. We're gonna do everything in black on the inside. I just think that's gonna look really sharp. And then of course, there's rust. So there's rust here, there's a little bit on the other side. Obviously the cab corners have a little bit of rust as well, but nothing major. But that's just cosmetic stuff that I'm not too concerned with. So I've just kind of been riding it like that. I haven't really done anything cosmetically to the truck, really, other than making it look shiny again. And of course, got to put the company logo on there. Now we got a nice little tax write-off. And it's been a great marketing thing for my business. So I do photo, video, and drone services. So I put Seth Michael Media on the side of the truck. That way when I'm driving around, it gets attention. The truck gets attention by itself, but now it gets more. And then the other reason why I did that is because during Christmas time, I actually bought a Christmas tree and I put it in the back of the truck and lit it up and was driving around, and people were stopping me wondering if they could take photos. And of course, I'm gonna let them take photos. So the next day, I went over to DVC Signs, which is local to me. They do all my vinyl stuff. And I had them print up some graphics so we can put it on the door. That way when people take photos of the truck, you can see the name. It's good marketing. The 5.7 drop is the lowest you can go without putting it on air, but there is a disadvantage. I don't know if you can really see it in the video here, but the tire, if I'm turned to the left and I hit a bump, it'll grab this right here. And I usually just carry a hammer with me so I can hammer it up. It's gotten worse. I think the suspension is just settled. And I think the other issue is that I have a gas tank right here. So you always got 16 gallons of fuel on this side of the truck. But if you come over to the other side, there's nothing there. So these trucks from the factory actually came with 2 fuel tanks, one on each side, 16-gallon tanks on each side. And what happened was the driver's side fuel tank is the one I was using primarily. And what was happening is there's a switch in there, a valve, and that valve was bad. So what was happening is that fuel from the one tank was somehow leaking into the other tank until it was completely full, and then it was just leaking out and you just had a gas smell everywhere. So long story short, Tony ended up taking that tank out because we didn't really use it anyway. The only issue that I'm finding now is I believe that now that all that weight's on the driver's side, I think the truck is kind of leaning a little bit, and it was just causing that side just to be a little bit lower. I think the long-term fix for that is going to be doing like a fuel cell in between the bed rails. We'll see what happens. Again, this truck isn't gonna be like a show truck. I never intended this truck to be a show truck. I just wanted it to be drivable and enjoyable, and that's what it's been. Now right now the interior is nothing special, but this is a Silverado. So back in the day, Silverado was a trim package. Silverado is comparable to GMC's Denali today. The Silverado came with factory air, power windows, power locks. It was a premium pickup. Whereas today, every Chevy pickup you get is a Silverado. But back in the day, this was the bee's knees. So we got power windows that work. So that's pretty cool. The AC does work, but it leaks, so I don't even try to recharge it anymore. Eventually we're gonna do an LS swap in this thing, and at that point we'll probably go vintage air. That way you can have a nice comfortable ride. But honestly, with the back slider and the windows down, even on a hot day, there's enough breeze in here to where it's really not that bad. And maybe it's just because I'm used to riding motorcycles in the crazy Florida heat, but it really doesn't bother me that much. Under the hood is nothing special. It actually looks really good right now. When Anthony over at Detail Specialist had this thing, he actually took some time and cleaned up under here, and he made it look really, really, really good. So the engine, nothing special. I just did spark plugs and wires, and here's the AC pump. It was squealing. I think this pump is probably going bad. I don't know. There was a belt on there. I cut that off because it was squealing. It was getting annoying, so I just took a pair of dikes, and as you can see, we do not have a whole lot of room for tire fitment under there. It is very tight, but it still rides really good. I've seen a lot of guys do the cheap route on these things when it comes to lowering them, just by cutting the springs and stuff like that. The issue with that is that you throw off the geometry and you're gonna wear through tires, and there's a bunch of issues that come with that. So if you're gonna lower your truck, do it right, get the drop spindles, because then you'll remain the factory you know, the geometry. So it's gonna ride a lot better than it would if you were just to cut the springs. So with this thing, the flip kit, drop spindles, the truck rides like factory suspension. Obviously it's an old truck, so it still rides like a tank, but at least your geometry is good and it's not gonna toss you around too much. Obviously all this stuff was done a very long time ago as far as the lowering goes, so the front end it needs to be gone through. The steering's a little loose, but again, we just got to get it on the lift and tighten things down, replace what needs replaced and all that good stuff. And power steering is leaking, but it's still working, so we'll worry about that later. So yeah, if there's anything like this that has changed your life, something that you've just had for a very long time, like I've had this truck, let me know in the comments below. Some things in life just have a value to them, and that's why I'll never sell this truck. There's just too much sentimental value in this truck for me to just get rid of it. From the relationships that I've built, in fact, the business that I've been able to receive just by having this truck as well. The doors that it's opened up. It's kind of crazy thinking back over the past, you know, almost, you know, 13 years of owning this truck and the people I've met and the places I've been. And it's wild to think that a truck, an old Chevy pickup, could lead to today. It's just crazy to think about, and I'm very thankful for this truck and everything that it has brought into my life. Anyway, I just want to share that with you guys today. And again, if you're into the motorcycle stuff, hopefully I'll have an update on the Indian shortly. Fingers crossed that it's nothing crazy. Until next time, guys. See ya.